If you are a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor or a nurse in the US, it's not a question of if you will be sued during your career. It's when will you be sued, how many times, and for how much. It's not a question of if, it is just a when type of situation. If you get a suit brought against you and you say, yes, I have millions of dollars. Great. Where do you have it? I have it in an offshore bank account that's structured in this, in a trust over there. I have nothing in my own name. Here it is. Come and get me.
If you lost your bank access tomorrow, your country changed its tax laws overnight, or you needed to relocate your family today, would you be prepared? Most people aren't, but our next guest has spent the last 2 decades teaching high net worth investors how to build their global plan B before they ever need it. Welcome back to the Real Estate Roundtable. I'm your host, Lancelot Lenard, and today we're diving into the world of global wealth protection, second residences, offshore opportunities, and international real estate with a true master of the game. Our guest, Mikkel Thorup, is the founder and CEO of Expat Money, a world-renowned expat consultant, best-selling author of Expat Secrets, and host of the massive, popular Expat Money Show, with travel to over 110 countries, living in 9, and advising clients globally. Mikkel has become the go-to strategist for those wanting to reduce taxes legally, diversify internationally, obtain second passports, and invest in real, tangible global assets. If you've ever wondered how to protect your wealth, expand globally, or gain more freedom, you're about to find out how the top 1% does it. Let's jump in. Mikkel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Lancelot. I appreciate the introduction. Hopefully today I will be able to answer your questions and inspire your audience a little bit. And I'm still very excited to talk about these things, even after 25 years, but very passionate about it, and should be a good conversation.
Mikkel, thank you. Before you became one of the world's leading expert consultants, you were a kid traveling the globe, chasing experiences most people only dream of. Take us back. What was that moment when you realized the world was bigger than the borders you were raised in?
It's an interesting one for me. So I actually went a very non-traditional path into this field and into travel in general. So I'm from Southwestern Ontario, from Canada, but I actually stopped going to school when I was 12 years old, and I officially dropped out when I was 15. And I started traveling internationally shortly after that as a teenager. And when I started traveling, I really found my purpose in life. I really found my people and what I wanted to do. And I am very blessed that I know what I was here to do. I'm here to explore and to be a present husband and father and to serve my clients. And I serve my clients by helping them through a very difficult transition period in their life. Most of my clients, when they move to a new country, it's not because they actually wanted to or ever planned to. In most cases, they actually thought that they would spend their whole life in their one state or one province or whatever it might be. But because of external focuses, they have had to move or feel like they are called to move. And to be there at that transition moment for them has been super, super rewarding. Going back to what did that look like at the beginning, as I said, I started traveling as a teenager. And it started out with some very easy trips around Europe and some backpacking, and then living in different places, and then much longer and much more extended trips. You said it in the intro, 110 countries. I think I've been at well over 120 now. We keep constantly add to it. And along the way, I have found a lot of different strategies for living a more free life. And these are not things that you would ever learn in university or going to college. These are I've learned through experience and apprenticeship and mentorship and patronage, working with some of the greatest minds in wealth protection and immigration and things like that. So I'll pause there for a second because I'm sure we can take that in any direction you want, but that's 20 some odd years in about 2 minutes.
That's awesome, man. Were there a specific trip or country that changed your worldview forever?
Oh my goodness, all of them. Every time I am constantly learning. I just got back from Central Asia with my wife and 2 of my kids. And I hadn't had a lot of experience in Central Asia. So we went to Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan last month. And it was once again an amazing experience and learning things that I had never seen before and I didn't understand. And you sort countries and people in areas and things like that, and you have build mental models. And this area totally destroyed all of those mental models of how I thought things worked and how things fit together. And so I'm constantly relooking at things and challenging my own beliefs. But every single year I go to new countries and I keep pushing the envelope. And each country and each place and each person I meet really shapes who I am.
When did you realize you weren't just traveling, you were studying how the world works?
Good question. Intuitively, I knew right at the beginning. Like I remember some of my first trips to France and stuff like that, like in 2000 or 2001 or something, and sitting in a cafe and just doing people watching and just watching everyday people go about everyday things, 100% different than I would have ever done it in Southwestern Ontario. And I wanted to know and understand why people do things. Why is certain food made a certain way at a certain time of year in this place? Why do they think this way? Why do they view things? Why in one country what you're doing would be considered rude and in another country it's considered completely acceptable? How is it that perspective fits things together? For example, my wife is from mainland China. She was born and raised and grew up in China. And the culture is about as different as you could possibly get on planet Earth in China than it is in Canada. And you might go there. Like I joke to my friends and family and stuff. I'm like, oh, you're going to China. Great. It's not a different country. It's a different planet. Like you are literally going to a different planet, the way that they view things. But it's not rude. It's not bad. It's not anything. And you hear all this mainstream media these days, and they want to paint China as the enemy in China. And you actually go over there, and they're actually like some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in the world, the hardest working people with a culture that goes back 6,000 years. And, you know, no one would really look at that because of just what's happening in Hollywood and mainstream media and politics. And it's like, I always wanted to actually go to a place and meet the people myself and make my own decision. Same type of thing. I've been to Iran. Iran gets slandered everywhere. I've been to North Korea. I've been to Zimbabwe and Zaire and Zambia. And I was in El Salvador 25 years ago, 22 years ago, when it was coming off of civil war and it was the most dangerous country in the world. And like I was going to places when nobody else would go there. And then I can make up my own mind about it. I think
That's the
perspective.
thing. Like, I'm a big traveler too, my friend. There's a little bit prequel to our conversation. I come from Europe. I was born and raised in Europe. I've been to probably about 30 countries, not as much as you have, but that's pretty good. When I was little,
Amazing.
always traveling with my parents and all that. So I got to experience all the cultures and you become worldly. And when you become worldly, your view is totally different when you're speaking to people. This is the thing a lot of people don't understand. As we're here in America, the news was a murder of a black person. On news in European countries, they don't state the color of the skin when something happens. It's just like there was a murder, and that's what it is. Like racism is not built into the everyday conversation, and that's one of the things I've learned when I came over here. That it's pushed down your throat here. It's coming out of the faucets and everything. It's not a thing in most places in the world. Like not in Europe at least. That's what I can attest to. They don't talk about it the way they do here. And that's something I learned. You've lived in 9 countries and visited over 120. At what point did these experiences evolve from adventures into strategies that now help high net worth individuals protect wealth and build freedom?
So I'd say you have to divide my professional career into kind of 3 phases to answer your question. So the first 6, 7 years of traveling, I was just out there having fun. I was a late teen, early 20-year-old, just building life experiences, trying to understand who I am. The next probably 7 years or so, I got very into personal finance and into investing specifically in public markets. I traded derivatives, options trading. I sold options for about 7 years and I made a lot of money and I lost a lot of money. And it was a very up and down type of thing. And now I've spent the last solid 10 years or so working with clients and moving them offshore because even during phase 1 and phase 2, I was out there opening bank accounts and starting companies and doing different banking and different all of these types of things, the tax strategies. So I was getting my feet wet, learning all these things. I'd been studying them. I'd been doing it in my own real life, and I'd been traveling for probably at that point maybe 15 years. But when I transitioned to an entrepreneur and really focused on these types of things, it was all the things that I knew how to do. It was all the things that I had tested and I'd been a guinea pig and I'd studied. And now over the last 10, 11 years, yeah, it has just grown and grown and grown. And now I was on the call this morning with my team, and I'm doing 8, 9 hours of consulting work a day. And these are with high net worth and ultra high net worth families. And I'm on the call with every single lawyer and every single accountant with the client. So I help design the team, then I build out the team. I help design the program, I build out the team, and then I'm there through implementation. So this is hundreds of families that I've been there. So even though I am not a lawyer myself, I'm on the call with every single lawyer. I'm there looking at the paperwork. I'm doing everything. There's a lot of knowledge that comes through, but that's like the phase one, phase two, phase three piece of it.
I love that. What were the biggest misconceptions you had to unlearn about taxes, borders, and opportunity?
I don't think actually I had to unlearn a lot of these things because I did not go through a traditional public education or college education of how things work. As I said, I left school at around 12 years old. So I'm self-taught. I'm an autodidact. I have not had bad behavior that I picked up through schooling that I had to unlearn or anything like that. I've very much been a practical type of person. Like I like to say with a lot of my friends and colleagues, this is the practical side of libertarianism or the practical side of the freedom movement, right? I'm not in it for the theory. I'm not in it for hypotheticals or anything like that. It's what can we do today to actually have more freedom in our lives? How do we actually protect ourselves? How do we actually increase our mobility? These are practical things. And so that's my focus.
Got you. What was the moment you knew expat money was needed globally?
I actually started consulting. I started doing business consulting a couple of years before I started Expat Money. And I was watching the questions that were being asked. And then you looked around and there was no one else providing the answers out there at that time. Now there are other, I'm not the only consultant in this space. Now there are a few other people out there. But at the time, there was no one really providing this stuff. It seemed like a very good place. If you think of a Venn diagram, what do I know? What do I like? And what am I good at? And what would people pay for? And that was the sweet spot. And that is the company, the offshore services and consulting that we do at expatmoney.com.
Cool. I'm still trying to go through in my head what you said earlier that hundreds of families and they are the top people. I'm pretty sure you can't disclose who they are, but I'm sure you got some crazy names on that list. You've
Yeah,
seen
I mean, I have a lot
economic.
of Yeah, I have names of people you would probably know, but obviously I can't disclose. But I can tell you that we have three different types of programs. We have a do it yourself, which is you're at $1 million, $2 million net worth. We provide all the resources. We have the Rolodex. We've got the community. All that's done. Here you go. You can do it yourself. Then we have a group coaching program. Those guys are a couple $1 million net worth. And then I do the private coaching one on one. And I've got probably the minimum would be $10 million net worth, but I've got some clients that are $150 million net worth, 9-figure type of net worths and helping their family. And it's usually like larger family dynasties. Sometimes I'm also brought in to consult with family offices, and I have a certain piece of the puzzle, and I'm working with other lawyers and professionals in the space. And I like that work. I like the family office work. It's very good.
Yeah, 'cause it's more personal, it's more intimate. You actually get to one on one and get to learn what they really want from them and then help them fine tune their needs. I think that's always, I'm in real estate. So, same thing for me. The one on ones are always better than the, hey, let's get on a Zoom call quickly with the attorney and they're going to lay out what I need and then you go get it. The one on ones are always more, okay, I understand what you're looking for and what you want, and I can help you even better
Yeah. I'm here
achieve
to
those
serve
goals.
families. Like the family is the unit. So I don't do business consulting. I don't consult with conglomerates or multinationals. I don't do any of the tax strategies or the lifestyle or anything like that for their executives. I deal with the family unit. That is my focus. And as I said before, who I serve and what I am put here to do.
And is this, Mikkel, is this from like America out or any big country or any wealthy country to wherever else to have other locations for them. What is exactly,
So the
I mean, is there
majority
a
of my
main
clients
focus?
are either, yeah, the majority of my clients are either Americans or Canadians. Let's call it 10% of the business would be Europeans or maybe Australians or something like that. Mostly we move people, or at least their finances and stuff, to the Caribbean, to Latin America, things like that. We do a little bit in low tax jurisdictions in Europe, but that's getting more and more difficult. We take people very little to Asia because there's some problems over there at the moment. And Africa is usually a bit too foreign for a lot of our people. I've traveled extensively in Africa and I've had a great time over there, but for most of my people, it's just a bridge too far. But Latin America, the Caribbean, that's pretty easy to get your arms around. The language, although different, is at least you can learn Spanish. It's very different than trying to learn, I don't know, Swahili or something or Thai.
Or that tongue language in Africa where they clicking. You've seen economic cycles, currency shocks, and political shifts. Which events shape your consulting philosophy the most?
I am very alert. You have to understand, I protect the downside, Lancelot. For me, debt is one of the worst things. And how we invest and how we move money offshore, we're usually doing a very low debt environment. So if we look at 2008, 2009, most of my clients have a painful memory associated with these times where people were going underwater and they were over leveraged and huge shifts in there. So people get that. I was not personally affected in that because I've always been very against debt, but I watched what happened in the world. And that's such a recent memory for people that I think that's a good one. But over the last 6 years, there's been a whole host of health things and government's reaction to health things, which I won't say because I think they're still censoring people. But my clients have a very vivid memory of what that looked like when they lost mobility or freedom of assembly or freedom of settlement or anything like that. And they were not happy and are still not happy about those types of things. And nor am I. I learned a lot, but I definitely use those as examples with my clients.
To be honest with you, this COVID-19 probably hit a lot of people shockingly in some states. Like I'm in Florida, so I put my hands up because I am in a great state because we were only
Yeah.
really locked down, not really locked down, but called it as a lockdown for 2 months. And then we reopened everything. So it wasn't as affected as, let's say, Michigan or New York or some other states up north that were like going to stay at home for 2 years, basically.
Yeah.
And I could see if I would have been living in one of those states, I would have been definitely looking, where can I move? How can I get out of here? I can't live in the house. I was in a 2 bedroom apartment during COVID, not a 4 bedroom house with a backyard where I could go out and breathe some fresh air, grill a steak on the barbecue or whatever. It was totally different. And I was like, whoa, if we would have to be here with a small child. I think our daughter was 1 year old in 2020. So with a 1 or 2 year old being locked into a 2 bedroom apartment was insane. I think that's definite plan B. Where are we going? Just get out of here. Like
Exactly.
we're lucky in the sense that we were deemed essential services. Both me and my wife are licensed real estate agents, so we could go and drive around town. But that's something that definitely, and that's a political slash health and slash a lot of other things put together. But here comes the caveat to our conversation. Let's talk about the phrase everyone keeps hearing: build your plan B before you need it. Why is global diversification more important now than ever?
Because you've seen what the federal government will do to people. You'll see how they react when you push back. Let's take the Canadian trucker convoy as an example.
Oh
This was
my God,
peaceful
that
protesters
was insane.
who were protesting because they were being forced vaccination for crossing the border while bringing goods and services to the United States. And they were also pushing back against mandatory vaccination for children, both of things that I absolutely support them in the right to. But if you wanted to support them financially, now you're considered a domestic terrorist and they froze your bank accounts. And that's super scary. Might be a good idea to have a bit of money offshore. Good to be able to pay your bills and pay your credit card and make sure in the middle of winter in Canada that you can pay your electricity bill and they don't cut it off, right? That's like literally the life or death in a situation like that. And I'm not being overly dramatic or anything like that, but you stop someone's ability to not even receive funds, but to make payments. And there's no other options because Canada only has 5 banks in it. Five, it's basically a monopoly of 5. And they don't give out banking licenses. It's not like the US where you've got 1,000 options out there. If the federal government comes in and says, that's it, this person can't bank, like you're screwed. But if you have everything set up offshore and you have an international Visa card or something like that, you're going to be a lot better off. We also saw this during COVID. You said the word, so I'm going to say the word COVID. They weren't issuing passports. A lot of times there was huge delays with countries in issuing passports. Sometimes they weren't allowing people to leave the country. Sometimes they weren't allowing people to enter a country because of this. Now, a lot of times entering the country, it was not subject to permanent residents and citizens. It was only subject to tourists. So if you're a resident of the country you're trying to get into, you probably had no problem, which means we need to have settlement rights in another country. We need to have a permanent residency or a citizenship and a passport there, right? That protects your mobility. You're being able to move to another country, right? There are so many instances with FATCA and FBAR and Americans having bank accounts or accounts overseas. That gets really problematic because of Obama, because of FATCA, this automatic exchange of information, right? So now half the world became closed to Americans, where banks and financial institutions refuse to do business with Americans because of Obama. If you have other citizenships, that can change the dynamic a little bit. If you move things overseas in advance and you stay compliant, that can open up additional opportunities to you. So there's so many reasons that we need to look at protecting our downside. So if you are a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor or a nurse in the US, it's not a question of if you will be sued during your career. It's when will you be sued, how many times, and for how much. It's not a question of if, it is just a when type of situation. If you get a suit brought against you and you say, yes, I have millions of dollars. Great. Where do you have it? I have it in an offshore bank account that's structured in this, in a trust over there. I have nothing in my own name. Here it is. Come and get me. Come and bring the suit to BVI, or come bring it to Cayman Islands, or come bring it over there. The lawyer who's handling the case is going to go, he's not going to work on contingency. There's no way. And there's no case for bringing it. And they're going to throw this out because they don't respect US law in these countries. There's no jurisdictional there. So it's like a lot easier to protect yourself from these frivolous lawsuits if you have your money offshore. So there was just example after example of why it might make sense to have a plan B. But as you rightly pointed out, you have to have them in advance. It can actually be against the law in some of these examples to set it up after these things have happened, like a lawsuit. If you try to move the money offshore after you've been sued, that's against the law. So you need to do it well in advance before you're going to get sued, before a divorce, before any of these problems or forfeiture or any of these types of things. It all needs to be done in advance.
Got you. What does a well-built plan actually look like in 2026?
I can tell you it's not as easy as it once was. First of all, the things actually that you see in the movies are almost always just Hollywood just making up stuff, or things that happened in the 70s and 80s that they pretend that still happen now. Everything that we do right now is fully compliant. We file all of our forms with the IRS or with whatever your home government is, with the Treasury Department, with FinCEN. There is an amazing amount of forms. We need to make sure that we file all of those. But most people, the work that we're doing is focused on what I affectionately call the 4+1. So the 4+1 is the immigration, it's the residencies, the citizenship, the immigration side of things. Then it is the foreign investment, real estate, agricultural land, timberland, gold, all of these types of tangible assets. I don't deal in the next hot stock tip or anything like that. I think that's all ridiculous. So I like tangible assets, and you're in real estate. So I think that you will agree with me on this. And then is how we structure it. So how are we holding it on all of these things? So moving the investment into a trust, a foundation, an LLC, an IBC, an SA. What does that look like? And then the tax and the filing requirements of your home tax country, plus of the country that we're getting the residency or passport in, plus the country where we have the asset structured. We have to be compliant with all of those. So that's the 4. And then the +1 is the lifestyle, is the thread that ties everything together. Because if we're going to have a plan B or we're going to move you offshore, it should fit who you are, your value system, and how you want to spend your time and everything like that. So that's the work product that I do. It takes me about a year to go through everything with them and make sure that we're compliant and we have all of the forms done. But it's good work, and I still enjoy it. And that's 2026, what it looks like, and we'll continue iterating and modifying as things go. But yeah.
What are the biggest myths Americans have about offshore strategies?
Yeah, this is an easy one. People think that they can just put stuff in a corporation, move it offshore, and they don't have tax obligations. Wrong. Not true. There are so many forms that need to be filled out. You must disclose everything. I blamed Obama before, and it's really true because he's the one who put in FATCA and an FBAR, which is an exchange of information. If you have more than $10,000 aggregate in any financial account offshore, you have to disclose it. And if you don't, it is huge fines. If it's a willful, if you know that you're supposed to disclose and don't do it, we're talking massive fines and in some cases even prison sentence on this. There's also a lot of people who are like, oh, I can just put the money offshore and I don't pay any taxes. I only will pay if I remit it back to the US. I can just have retained earnings offshore. And it's no. If it's a passive entity, there's filing for that. If it's a controlling interest, it can be different. There's a lot that goes into these things. So this is not, oh, I'm going to get some Swiss numbered account. I'm going to move everything over there. Government will never know. This is not a Bond villain movie or something. Like, no, we got to stay compliant with this.
For sure. I've interviewed a few lawyers and attorneys on my podcast, and some of them do make the Cook Islands, et cetera, to build. When you're building your estate plan, the best one so far I heard had this amazing plan that you have trusts built in the United States, but you also have one offshore in like a Cook Islands, where if you do get sued, everything moves over to there to a trustee that's sitting there and it can't be pierced by a local attorney. This was more about asset protection than actually having all your assets over there. Because your assets still might be in the United States, but it's held by a trust on the Cook Islands, basically.
Yeah, we do a lot of domestic trust work. We do a lot of international trust work. We do family foundations. We do all of these types of structures and things like that. But people need to understand it's depending on the size of the estate as well. So, we're looking at things from a tax perspective. We're looking at things from an estate planning side of things. If we're doing grantor trusts or non-grantor trusts, how large is the estate and gifting strategies and lifetime gifting and all of these types of things. Because obviously with US, if you're over $30 million, you have a whole new set of problems that do not apply to people under $30 million because of gifting and things like that. And then probate and passing on the assets. It's all part of the work.
What mistakes do people make that cost them money, or worse, their freedom?
Trying to do all of your research on YouTube is a funny one. I get people who send me this. I watched this YouTube video and it said this. And I'm like, all right, but there's no context in here. It's not tailored to your individual situation. It's some marketing piece or something that someone makes off, and people will make very flippant type of comments, right? Like nothing at all in today's conversation should be construed as individual tax, legal, or investment advice. I'm working alongside the lawyers. We're doing, you pay for an engagement with my company. I have full-time lawyers that work with me, and we're going through it. If you're doing your research just on YouTube or a blog article or something, that's just not a substitute whatsoever for tailor-made advice. So good people in this space, we charge a good amount of money because this is highly specialized information. This is what I've spent my career doing. And once again, you can't go to university. You can't even go to an Ivy League school to do what I do. And my number one group of clients, if you took all of my private clients that I work with, the number one client who hires me and pays my fees are lawyers. Why? Because lawyers understand the value of specialized information. They've spent a lot of time. They're very smart. They've spent a lot on their education, and they recognize that this is not their field of knowledge. And I'm sure they're fantastic domestic real estate lawyers or securities lawyers or small claims lawyers or something like this. But offshore is not something that most people have experience with. So you need to pay for a specialist.
You help clients invest in real estate, agriculture, and other hard international assets. Why are these so powerful compared to what most Americans invest in?
I think the big one right now is the US is in massive amounts of debt. And the only way that they will ever get out of this debt is to inflate the currency. And we're seeing huge inflation in the United States and most Western democracies right now, huge inflation. So in an inflationary environment, you need to put your assets in something tangible, something that's going to retain value, something that has intrinsic value into it. And they can't just turn on the printing press and make more of it. For me, that has always been real estate and land. My mother was a real estate agent and a broker when I was growing up. My parents flipped houses. We went and viewed real estate every single weekend when I was a child. I'm 42 right now, so I've got decades upon decades of experience in real estate right from when I was 5 years old till now. And it has done me very well in my life. My wife is from China. Chinese people understand two things. Actually, quick side story. When I married, my wife said to me, Mikkel, you can invest in anything you want anywhere in the world. I don't care as long as it is either real estate or gold. And I was like, perfect. We're going to get along very well. So I'll come home and I'll be like, hey, I just bought 3 new apartments. She's like, great. That's wonderful, honey. Where are they? She's not worried about these things. If I came home and I was like, hey, I bought such and such stock portfolio, or I got some stock tip or something like that, we would not be having a happy marriage right now. So real things, tangible things that I can touch and smell and feel and put my arms around, that's what I want.
And which markets are most undervalued right now, in your view? Outside the US, of course.
Yeah, I don't do anything to do in the US. For US domestic questions, everybody please ask Lancelot. He knows a lot more. He's a real expert on that. For the domestic space, for the international space, that is my focus. We write a couple of different newsletters that deal with real estate. These are complimentary. I could charge for these newsletters, but they're complimentary. So the main one is at expatmoney.com, where you'll get access to everything. But that's international real estate in general. But we also do one called brazilbeachfront.com, where we do twice monthly newsletters and we focus on certain areas in Brazil. Now, I'm not saying everybody should move to Brazil tomorrow, but for investment in real estate, there are some phenomenal opportunities there. I'm talking about beachfront properties outside of a city or cities with 4 or 5 million people. You're driving for half an hour. You're going to buy beachfront, front row on the beach, right? Not beach views, not squint in the distance, and you might see a little bit of blue. I mean, you're on the sand for 100 grand, and it's titled property, and you're going to cash flow at around 10% on it. And so I don't need leverage for that. You can buy that. Year one, you're going to cash flow at 10%. Like, that's amazing. And most of my clients are coming in, they're buying 3 of them or 5 of them or 10 of them. I'd rather have 10 doors and no debt instead of buying one couple $1 million place that's going to return less. And if the market goes against us like 2008, 2009, and there's this housing crash or correction or whatever you want to call it, now you're underwater. This is like real property. So brazilbeachfront.com, we've got a great newsletter on there that talks about that real estate. And then I have another newsletter called Paraguay Potential, paraguaypotential.com. And Paraguay is a country that I've been working in for the last 3 or so years and is unbelievable. It is a developing country, but it is a very safe and stable country. I've had the opportunity to meet the president of the company of the country on 2 different occasions, and I've sat down with him and privately talked to him for half an hour about these things. And he's a pro-business, right-leaning administration. He's a young guy. He's only about 5 or 6 years older than I am, and good head on his shoulders. And we're buying apartments there for around $70,000. And once again, cash flowing at 8, 9, 10, 11%, and titled. So this is not leasehold or 99-year lease or Mexican bank trust or any of this rubbish you may have heard of. These are titled properties, low property taxes, and turnkey. You don't need to live there. You're not dealing with tenants, termites, or toilets, the 3 T's. Work with a property manager. They find the client for you. They sign the contracts. They collect the rent. They deal with the maintenance. They deal with all of the problems. And you just collect money on the back end. And then the value of the property goes up or should go up every year with inflation. And you're just collecting the cash flow of it year after year. And so we design large portfolios for clients who want to get the money offshore and in something tangible and is going to support their lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it does. Isn't it scary though? This is my question. I always thought about third country. I've traveled multiple countries. I own properties in 2 countries so far. And I know Europe is a different ball game than, let's say, South America, in my opinion. You might look at it differently because you've been there and done it. It always scares me what happened in Venezuela, what happened in Cuba. Could that happen in a country like Brazil or Paraguay if I buy a piece of property and then the state comes in and says, "Oh, everybody that's not Paraguayan, now your properties are ours." Is there like any kind of possibility for that, or you don't have to be really scared of stuff like that? What's the game in that, Mikkel?
Anything in the world, in the universe, is possible. We could get hit by an asteroid tomorrow, and all of this conversation wouldn't make any sense.
So the
Now, I'm looking
percentage
at,
of that happening is about like an asteroid striking us.
I would say so, because what we're doing is we're looking at the geopolitics. First of all, I have PhD political scientist analysts who work for my company. So we're watching the geopolitics, the local politics every day. We're visiting the country. I take groups of clients. Our last trip to Paraguay, I had 50 investors, 50 multimillionaires that we flew down as a group to Paraguay and spent 8 days in the country viewing the real estate, meeting the lawyers, meeting everybody, getting the residencies, looking at the real estate, meeting with government officials before any investment is made. So people are seeing this themselves. We drew trips to Panama, to Paraguay. We're going to Colombia next week. So it's like there is just constantly on the grounds research. Now, yes, Venezuela is a terrible situation, as is Cuba. So was Germany in World War I and Germany in World War II. So was Italy. So is the USSR and what they did. So is Czech Republic and Slovak Republic, which was Czechoslovakia. So was Yugoslavia. So was et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are all European places with massive amounts of problem. Actually, if anything, Europe is the place that is going hardcore socialist right now, and Latin America is going hardcore pro-business, pro-foreign direct investment, pro-right leaning. They're not going to the left, they're going to the right. Europe is going to the left. Look at what's happening in the UK. Look what's
Oh,
happening
I
in
know.
France.
I mean,
The
Hungary is probably the only country still on the right there.
marginal tax rate 90%. 90% in France for top marginal tax rate. So great. You get to keep 10% of whatever you earn. Does that sound fair to you? They want to tax you on worldwide income when you leave the country. They lost by one vote. Okay. One vote they were going to do. Look what they did to the farmers in Holland. They destroyed an entire industry. These are people who own these land forever. They were propping up, they were feeding Europe. They destroyed it. What did they do to the Nord Stream pipeline? Now we know it was Ukrainians who bombed the pipeline, and it was most likely support either from the UK or from other Western democracies, bombing and allies of these are the pipelines that are bringing in natural gas to Germany and the rest of the countries. That's where I would be worried, not in Latin America. Look at
No,
Latin
I
America. So
totally get you on that.
we've got Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, cleaned up the country, got rid of the gangs, legalized Bitcoin as tender. We've got Javier Milei in Argentina, downsizing the government, strengthening the currency. Everything is doing great there. We have Santiago Peña in Paraguay, who I was talking about before, who I've had a chance to meet. We have Raul Molino here in Panama, pro-business, right-leaning. We have Daniel Noboa from the wealthiest family in Ecuador, pro-business, right-leaning, very good guy, very, very charismatic. Okay. Bolivia just went right-leaning. Chile, the election's coming up. We'll see about that. But it's just country after country are going to the right. They're not going to the left. They're going more business, not more socialist. So the outliers now are just Venezuela and Cuba. We'll see about the remaining couple of countries in there. I'm actually meeting with the future president, or in my not so humble opinion, the future president of Colombia next week, Sergio Fajardo. I'm meeting with him next week. I've got a 45-minute meeting to sit down with him and ask him about his perspective for South America and what's going. And he's the ex-mayor of Medellin and the twice governor of Antioquia, the province of Medellin, which is one of the most important regions. And he's ahead in the polls of this. And he's an amazing man. He's a mathematician by background, very smart, very charismatic. And I'm really excited to meeting him. But these are all pro-business government.
So you say, I'm trying to process everything you're saying, but it sounds like it's almost a better investment to go to these countries now and invest money there than it is to invest here at home.
Of course, we're doing all of these things because you have better returns with less risk, less liability. You don't need to use leverage. It's a rising tide lifts all boats because as the economies grow, Paraguay just got BBB rating via Moody's. So it's now an investment grade. So billions of dollars are flowing in there. But what's happening in my home country of Canada? They're increasing taxes. They want to increase the inclusion rate. They wanted to put it at 666. Okay. Don't tell me that number is a mistake. Okay. They wanted to increase the inclusion rate to 66.6%. Okay. There's huge problems in my country. They're now taking land. They want to take land away from people in British Columbia and redistribute it. Okay. Alberta now wants to secede from the country because of all of the problems there. Like,
51st
this is
state, you're saying.
massive. Yeah. So you have these Western democracies which are going down, who are in debt, who are in bankrupt, and you have these developing countries who have very little debt. Their debt to GDP in Paraguay is 30%. Okay, the U.S. is over 100%. Okay, it's much more stable, and these countries are on an upward trajectory. They're not there yet. They're not perfect. There's still problems, but they're in the right trajectory. Canada, the UK, France, so many of these countries are going down. So it's like, maybe you want to allocate a certain amount of your capital to growing markets. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Any red flags when considering properties abroad?
Yeah, you need to do your due diligence. You need to work with trustworthy professionals. Please work with debt-free companies. Go and view things and see things and do your research. That's part of the value proposition. Is we do the research. We've got all of the analysts. We buy the properties first. We test it, not just paper numbers. We actually test it with our own money first. Then we introduce you. We bring you down there. We get on an airplane beside you. We organize the buses and the meals. You go and view it. You meet people. Everything is digital today. But for me, nothing beats, Lancelot, nothing beats shaking a man's hand, looking him in the eye, and having a real conversation with him. Maybe I am too old school about this, but for me, it still has value. Okay. So I
Oh, you
want
get
people to
character. You get so much from that. It's insane. I had a person on my podcast that we had a short talk about this, that when you're in a negotiation, a one-to-one, face-to-face negotiation, there's so much more information that you gather from that besides the words. It was a conversation actually about text messaging with your clients back and forth and how they read your text and how you're reading their text. It could be totally different than what they're actually doing or you're actually trying to tell them. Because it's not a voice they hear and it's not a face they see, that you're sincere about what you're saying. And that could change everything. So the handshake is the same thing. You can see a person's character from the get-go in the first 5 seconds of a meeting, meeting someone, shaking their hands and saying hello. And you're like, okay, this is probably a straight shooter. You could probably get those vibes, especially if you do it a lot. In your instance, 120 plus countries, you've done quite a few handshakings in your lives. So you've probably met quite a few people that you can absorb the information from their body language. Like, it's 90% of your talk is body language. The rest is just from words coming out of your mouth and donation and stuff like that. But the body language is the actual sincere part where where you can figure out what's actually happening there. That's why I love it that you go and meet the presidents and you meet the future presidents and you're shaking hands and you can see what's going on. Actually, it's, oh, I'm one-on-one with these people. I'm sitting down for coffee with them and we're discussing politics and whatnot with them. And that to me is, why not invest with this company? Because they're actually doing the legwork. No?
Exactly. When I met the,
How does someone?
Go ahead, please.
No, you go ahead. You had a thought.
So the first time I met the president of Paraguay, and first of all, actually, I agree with everything you just said. You were bang on in all of that. So I'll give you a concrete example of that and just flesh out what I was saying before when I met the president. Paraguay is part of the Mercosur agreement, which is a free trade zone in South America, similar to the EU. It has settlement rights and free trade of goods and services. So Panama has just recently joined as an associate member. Panama is where I live, Panama City. They've just joined it as an associate member of Mercosur. So the president of Paraguay, Santiago Peña, came to Panama to have some meetings in Panama. And they held a very small luncheon from the private sector. And I was invited because I have a good name and people know who I am. So I was invited to attend the meeting and I had a chance to sit down with him. And I liked what he had to say. And I was already investing in Paraguay and I was already doing trips there and all these types of things. But maybe 2 or 3 months later, I was down in Paraguay with a group of my clients and I happened to get a one-on-one meeting with him. So the first one was an on books meeting, official type of thing. The second one was an off books. And so it was just me, the president, and one colleague of mine. And we're sitting down and He's asking me about the immigration and what's my opinion about this and that. And we're discussing his country. And I've gone through the immigration process and we're just consulting with him. And he's listening intently, Lancelot. And I'm talking to him about the problems in Canada, listening intently. And all of a sudden, he reaches forwards, he puts his hand on my shoulder and he goes, Mikkel, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about freedom. And he leans back in his chair and he goes, don't worry about that. We've got lots of that here. I was like, yes, Mr. President, that is exactly what I'm talking about. I am talking about freedom. And from that moment, Lancelot, I was like, fuck, this is amazing. This country is insane. The administration is on board. Like, I just started doubling down and just investing more time, more energy, more money in this country. Because when you have all of these things lined up, like rocket fuel, like it just absolutely is rocket fuel to take you to the next level. And so I'm just so bullish on Paraguay on every level. And now after many trips and showing, you have to also understand, my clients are very sophisticated, very smart, very good families. I bring them to this place and I'm like, all right, this is what I see. Okay, this is what my research tells me. This is what I see. These are the people I'm meeting. What do you think? And I probably brought over 100 of my investors to Paraguay now. And they're all like, this is insane. And they're all just dumping money into that country hand over fist. And that's why we're writing the newsletter at Paraguay Potential and why we do the trips and why we have the webinars, why I have everything there, because this country is just on fire.
That's awesome, man. I'm interested. How does someone even begin researching a country that they've never been to?
I'm going to plug my own work here. Go to expatmoney.com and we have an immense amount of stuff there. We're a team of about 30 people and we're really on top of this stuff. You'll also notice that a lot of blogs or YouTube channels, you hear people talking about it and it's get this funny feeling. You're like, person really know what they're talking about? It's like they're reading a script or they're just talking about something that they don't really have experience with. That's because they are. We're the originators of a lot of these ideas. I've been out here for 25 years, traveling and exploring and looking at this. You know, we come up with a lot of the ideas. Unfortunately, we get copied a lot, which they're supposed to say, copying is the greatest form of flattery, blah, blah. I don't find it very flattering. I find it rather annoying. At least give us credit. At least say, hey, we sourced this information from expatmoney.com or from Mikkel Thorup or something like that. But I think that you guys are smart and your audience is very smart, Lancelot. They'll know the difference when looking at information. But we've got a lot of things there. And if it makes sense, I'm happy to help your clients.
That's awesome. Let's switch gears to gold. Gold has been a wealth preservation asset for thousands of years. But offshore gold storage, that's a whole different level of strategy. Can you break down why clients are moving physical metals overseas?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is to do with the politics right now and how aggressive these governments are. We as in Western society went off the gold standard 40 some odd years ago, and it has added a lot. Yeah, like the currency is basically like been destroyed. It's been completely inflated into
We gave the
oblivion right now.
power of wealth to our politicians, which we should never have done.
Agreed.
Because what they
And
did with it was disgusting.
yeah, but now
Sorry,
central banks
that's my honest
realize
opinion.
that no, of course I agree. Now central banks realize that they can't rely on for settlement between countries their own fiat money or their neighbors' fiat money or even US dollars because US dollars are being weaponized and the petrodollar is dead and all of these types of things. And they looked at what happened with Russia and sanctions on all of these things. And it's okay, what are we going to do? We don't trust the US. We don't trust each other. So what do we trust? There's no counterparty risk on gold. So central banks have been buying gold like crazy. Turkey's buying gold, China buying gold, Russia buying gold.
Hungary
Many
bought a lot of gold too.
Hungary buys a lot of gold. There's a lot of these countries that are buying. And that's been driving the price up. People wonder why it's gone from $2,000 an ounce to $4,000 an ounce. It's not really that the gold has gone up. It's that the currency has gone down in most cases. But the buying is happening from the central banks. Retail investors up until now make up a very small amount of this. But when you realize that silver is up something like 63% this year and gold is up at 55% this year, then it's, that's pretty much the best asset. Like we're talking about if you cherry pick the best stock tip of the year, that's the numbers we're talking. But it's gold. It's so easy to understand. It's so easy to get your arms around. And now imagine when it's not just central banks, but really retail investors start piling on, or even bigger, institutional capital starts coming in, pension funds or things like this start coming in. I mean, it's, I think $10,000 an ounce is not out of the question by any stretch of the imagination. Now, here's the thing, Lancelot, that you have to understand is that when you're storing the metal internationally, it's actually a drag on your portfolio because it costs money to maintain, to protect, to insure the metals every year. So I'm never telling people put 50% or even 20%. I'm talking about 5% of your portfolio, a reasonable amount, right? And that protects your purchasing power and should go up. And if you need, it's there. You can sell it, or even better, you can take loans against it and you can pass it on to your kids. And you talk to your accountant, but you take a loan against something, shouldn't be a taxable event. There shouldn't be capital gains on it or anything like that. Pay back the loan at a reasonable interest rate, a fair market value. And now you can hold on to the asset and you're going to pay it back with a currency which is worth less than when you got it because they're inflating it. So it can be a smart decision in case you need capital. So instead of having a rainy day fund in US dollars or Canadian dollars or something, then you have it in gold. It makes a lot of sense.
Which jurisdictions are trustworthy to store these?
We work with jurisdictions around the world. I've been invited to visit probably a dozen different vaults in many different countries. Some countries I like, and sometimes it's the jurisdiction, sometimes it's the vault at themselves. But there's some good options there. There's some classic ones and there's some new ones. And I work with clients privately on moving the metals offshore. We deal with the logistics of that, of all the insurance. We deal with first of all, we only do allocated and segregated. So we're not dealing with paper gold or ETFs or foldable. These are not financial accounts. It's all physical metal.
How does a beginner avoid getting scammed or overpaying for a service like that?
Stay away from numismatics. These are quote unquote collector's coins, unless you really have a huge background or you're a historian or something special that the general public don't, then I would stay away from numismatics. I would try to get to spot price, as close to spot price as possible. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a increase in fabrication price because everybody needs to make their money. Try to get as close to the vault or as close to the mint as possible. Don't work through third party on top of third party on top of third party. Actually, if you guys want more information, go to expatmoney.com/gold. We've got a ton of information on that website, on that webpage, and the company we work with and where you can store it and how to store it and the allocated, segregated, because I know we're running out of time here. I could speak for the next 12 hours about precious metals, but I think that you'll find a lot of information on that one.
I have a few more questions. I know we're running out of time, but I have a few more questions. If you don't mind, if you have time. Do you have time?
Sure, I got a couple more minutes. And then I got consulting calls because I do work for a living. Even though I don't need to work for a living anymore, I'm considered independently wealthy at this point.
I think it's more fun when you're enjoying it, man. It's not called work anymore. That's what I do too. Where do you see the global de-dollarization heading?
De-dollarization is happening. That's a fact. It's no longer a speculation. We can see this because you can look at the reserves of foreign countries and the amount of US dollars that they're holding is less and less every single year. We can look at the treasuries. The only reason that the T-bills and things like that haven't absolutely shit the bed is because you've got these stable coins that are vacuuming these up. But most countries in the world are getting rid of US debt. Okay. And they're moving it into gold. This is what's happening, right? Because gold is the only market that can really absorb this amount of inflows of capital and there's no counterparty risk to it. So they're getting rid of US debt and they're buying gold. But why do normal people not know this? Because stable coins are scooping those up. Okay. But de-dollarization is happening. Then if you look at the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Korea, South Africa, and then all of the BRICS plus countries, Turkey and Saudi and all of these types of things that are coming in. They're looking at settlement between their own countries. So they're developing their own currencies for paying for goods and services. And these are all resource-rich countries. So countries that actually have real resources, not just white-collar services, which is really what the U.S. economy is right now. It was a manufacturing superpower. and then they offshored all of their manufacturing. And now Trump is trying to bring the manufacturing back, but there's a lot of people are not trained for it. They don't know how to do it. They don't want to do it. It's why your iPhone costs $1,000 because it's made in China. And if it was made in the US, it probably cost 5 times that. And people aren't willing to pay that kind of money, right? But we're going to see settlement of currencies not done in RMB or euros or British reais or something like that. It's going to be done in something different. What that is, we're still waiting to figure out. But my experience is it will be something backed by gold. And so that's what we need to be looking at, not in the next month, but over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. This is the trend. I have no idea what's going to happen next month, Lancelot, but I know what's going to happen over the next 10 years.
Got you. So after working with thousands of clients living across countries and seeing governments rise and fall, what's the one message you want people listening right now to truly understand?
All governments are scum. They steal from you. They lie to you. They are not public servants. They're horrible people. They're sociopaths. They don't have your family's best interest at heart. What you need to do as a husband, as a father, as a mother, as a daughter is protect yourself and protect your family. And then you go out and you go out in rings from there, cententric rings. Right, that's my alarm. And protect those around you. So it's going to start with your immediate family, then your extended family, your neighborhood, your clients, your friends, and goes out from there. The federal government is not here to help. They're not going to do anything from you. They're going to steal from you. They're going to change the rules. They're going to surveil you. This is a horrible thing, and people need to break their Stockholm syndrome with their government, this abusive relationship that they have. You need to rely on yourself, your community, your friends, your family. That's it.
That's a great message. And before we wrap up, tell us about your upcoming Wealth, Freedom, and Passport conference and why someone who's serious about global diversification needs to be there.
Yes, expatmoney.com/conference. It is a live event in Panama City. We have a lot of fun with it. So actually, we're going to do an optional day on March 5th. We're going to have a paddle tournament. Paddle is like a phenomenon here in Latin America. Started in Mexico and then got popular in Spain. It's like tennis/racquetball. Like they had a baby or something, but it's super fun. We did a day. No, not pickleball, because similar to pickleball, but it's like racquetball where the walls and the back are still in place. So we can bounce off of the back wall and still come and play. We had an event in Paraguay, and we had 30 of my clients participate. We had 7-year-olds and 70-year-olds on the court, and everyone was laughing and having a good time. So we're going to do an optional one on the 5th. Then the 6th is the Wealth, Freedom, and Passport Conference. This is March 2026. And then the 7th, we're going to do tours of Panama. We're going to take people out to an off-grid community we're building in the highlands. We're taking people out to the beaches where we've got some real estate. We're doing a city tour. And then that night will be my 43rd birthday party. We've been running my birthday party for 6 years now, and we get hundreds of people who come. So it's always a lot of fun. You guys are super, super welcome. We try to price the tickets as affordable as possible to get as many people there. But if you resonate with today's message, and if you would like to learn more, this is the #1 spot. We probably have about 300 people live flying in for the event. So March 6th and 7th with an optional day on March 5th, 2026. And it's expatmoney.com/conference.
Thank you, Mikkel. If today's episode opened your mind to a bigger world, that's the point. Wealth, freedom, and security don't come from hoping your country changes. They come from building a global strategy that puts you in control. Huge thank you to Mikkel Thorup for sharing this experience, expertise, and vision for 2026 and beyond. If you want more episodes on the international real estate, offshore strategies, second passport, and global wealth preservation, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow the podcast, leave a review, share this episode with someone who needs a plan B. This is Lancelot Lenard, host of the Real Estate Roundtable, signing off. Until next time, stay informed, stay diversified, and stay empowered. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining us on Sir Lancelot's Real Estate Roundtable, where we've unveiled the mysteries of real estate together. Remember, in this kingdom of possibilities, every dream home is just a discussion away. I can help your real estate dreams come true. Just call me at 786-449-7518. Until our next roundtable, may your ventures be prosperous and your homes be filled with love and joy. Farewell, fellow knights of real estate.